Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conversations with Tara and Ryan. My name is Ryan, and I'm with...
And I'm Tara Ballman.
And we have a great guest today, Madison Gunn of Absolute Trust Counsel. Madison, thank you so much for joining the show. And what chapter of the NAAPC are you with? Remind me.
I am with the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the National Aging in Place Council.
And she's the new chair. Yay! Yes. Congratulations.
Thank
We've got
you.
a whole new team of people up there, so it's exciting.
Madison is drunk on power right now, so we'll see how this podcast goes. We'll see. No, just kidding around. But thank you so much for doing that. I'm the chair of the Massachusetts chapter. It's a lot of work, but it's great to be able to lead and help people and grow the chapter. So that's great that you're doing that. So let's talk. Tell us about what you do. Tell us about your company and give us an overview of what you do and how you help seniors.
Great. So I am an associate attorney for our firm, Absolute Trust Counsel. I handle estate planning. So that's trust, will, powers of attorney, all the fun stuff no one wants to deal with until it's an emergency and they realize they needed it. And we also handle conservatorships. Some states, they call them guardianships, special needs trust, planning for seniors, for Medi-Cal, Medicare, and we also handle the fun after death stuff, trust administration, probates, necessaries. And I'll just add, I'll throw it in here that I am only licensed in California. Every single state has a different probate code. This is not one of those things that crosses all 50 states. So we have to, I'll just say, I'm going to answer as general as I can. Most things are pretty common across the 50 states, but as always, speak to an attorney in your state.
So let's start with then a very general question. I think most people assume that wills or trusts are for people with wealth and real estate and assets. So can you maybe address that a little bit?
Sure. I think a lot of people get scared by the word estate because they picture like Downton Abbey or Buckingham Palace, and they picture this huge estate that, generates wealth for a town. And an estate generally just means what you have. It doesn't matter if it's small or large. It's just what you have. It could be your $5 in your bank account. It could be your house and your 2 cars and your, $50,000 brokerage account and your IRA. It's just a general term that means everything you own. And so having a will or trust is important if you want to determine where your things go after you die. So most states, if not all, have a law that says where it goes after you die if you don't have anything else in place. So having a will or a trust says where that can say where you want it to go or control it how you want to control it. Otherwise, the law is going to say it goes to your legal heirs and here's how this law is going to determine that. Sometimes people don't want that. You may not want your stuff going to your sister. You might want it going to a charity instead. So having a will or a trust sets that up for you to have a little bit of control beyond the grave.
And it's also for things that people don't really think about, like our pets. What happens to our pets? Is that something I know a lot of people do? My in-laws have pets. So what happens when they're no longer able to care for them and when there's not a plan in place?
Yeah. So, typically if you have a will or trust, you can say where I want my pets to go, who I want to take care of them. You can give a little cash gift if you think that it might need it to help care for the pet, pay for vet costs, things of that nature. You can also set it up through a rescue. So sometimes certain rescues like the Humane Society will say, if you give us a donation, we will come take your pets, we will house them, and then find a suitable home for them. So that's like, they do all the vetting, and it's through a rescue group, especially if you have a dog or a cat that is a specific breed. Not everybody should probably own a Maine Coon cat. They're a little needy, or a Great Dane, so you might want to go through a rescue for that particular breed. And if you don't have any plan in place and your friends or family don't step in, your pet's going to go to the pound. And I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah, and Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was going to say the common denominator of who we talk to on this podcast is planning. And I can say that just this week we had a client pass away, and they passed away with their family members yelling at each other in the next room in hearing distance to where they were staying. And it was, I don't know what it was about, but it comes down to care and money. That's what it ends up boiling down to. And you can avoid these things, or hopefully avoid these things, by setting up a plan for when you can no longer advocate for yourself, that it's all set up, whether it's for Fido or whether it's for the Lord Barrington Estates. You can do it all and make sure that family members know what the best course of action is. So you try to avoid those family squabbles and those fights and that confusion that can lead to some really nasty arguments.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be this big, complicated estate plan. Sometimes it is, but it can be something as much as you hand wrote a will, and it can be something as much as I set up a trust and put everything in it, and there's going to be the trust administration, and it can be, and anything in between. So it's not a one size fits all approach by any means.
And what do you find most people are fighting over when there isn't something in place? Is there a common denominator there? Is it always the money and the stuff?
Well, you'd be surprised, like the stuff creates a lot of fights, like your precious moments figurines create a lot of strife. I don't know why. That's not my personal, thought process. When I lose a family member, it's not like, oh, let me get that tchotchke. Yeah, it's nice to have something as a memorial for somebody, but I don't think, arguing over figurines and, your spoon collection or your decorative plates or whatever, that's not my thing. But everybody's to each his own. So that we see a lot of fights over that, surprisingly. And then we see a lot of fights over money, particularly like joint bank accounts. Like, mom has a trust, everything's in the trust, but she took an account out of the trust and put Susie on title with her to help her pay her bills. Well, by law in California, if a joint tenancy on a bank account overrides an estate plan, that's how it's titled, it goes directly to the survivor. And you see people fight over that a lot, especially if like mom threw someone on her brokerage account with her to help make financial decisions. That's a lot bigger than an operating checking account. So we'll see that a lot. And there's only so much we can do about it, but we see it a lot, and it triggers litigation a lot, which I don't do. So don't call me for that.
So that was also one of the questions that I had for you today. Like, should people be adding their children to bank accounts? Does it make it easier in the long run or harder? Yeah.
So that's one of those weird things. It really depends on the situation and the family. So, and it depends on the people. So if you add your child to your bank account, that account is now considered your child's asset as well. So if they get an offender vendor and get sued, that asset's available as their asset in order to be collected on a judgment. If they get divorced, that's an account that's going to be counted in a divorce. And if you don't, depending on each state with community property laws and stuff, that might be considered available to a spouse in a divorce. So we don't like people putting kids on your bank accounts or your house in a way to avoid, which is a whole other issue, because that involves, tax benefits if you don't. But those are all ways that, it can cause trouble. Now, if it's your checking account and you don't really have any assets and your Social Security is going in there and then you're paying your rent out of there, and it's really, you just get down to that $10 every month and then replenish it on the first, and it just goes that cycle, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're talking about things that are going to be a big issue, counting against your children in any way, or people are going to fight over it, then we suggest not doing that. That's what a good power of attorney is for.
I feel like you just described the start of every Nightline or 2020 program. Like, somebody's name was on a large bank account and then they disappeared. Well, who could it be? But I'm sure that brings up quite a lot of of strife. Now, the other thing kind of to talk about this is taxes, right? Some of the estate planning allows you to protect and shield your assets from taxation, which I know, being in California, I'm in Massachusetts, we know about taxes.
Yeah.
We know about them well. Taxachusetts over here, and I think you're even worse, but Taxachusetts just rings better than whatever you can call California. But do you get a lot of business from people that are saying, "Hey, I live in California. They're gonna take everything I got, or 50%. We need to shield this. And what do I do?"
Yeah, I mean, right now the estate tax exemption for the federal government is like your first 11.8 million is safe.
It's pocket change.
So if you're married, you get to double that, right? So I mean, yeah, all the people worth 25 million and more, they have to really worry about it. But those are people that don't pay taxes anyways, frankly. So, or at least know how to get around that. So the rest of us, we just keep track of how those laws are going to change. They're going to go down in 2026 to about 6 million per person. Now, if you own a house in LA, San Francisco, Orange County, that you can hit that 6 million pretty fast. Now, your estate for taxation purposes, that includes your retirement accounts, any life insurance on your name, all of that. So even though it looks like it's all going to other people and it's not a part of your will or your trust, like an IRA or life insurance might not be, it's still all included. So you have to think about that. And so we do have certain trusts set up to where you may not be able to avoid estate taxes entirely, but it certainly will allow you to delay it for a surviving spouse. You don't want a little house-rich widow having to write a check to the IRS. So, and then every state actually has their own estate tax laws. So California, we don't have an estate tax. So I don't know, we might be sitting a little prettier than, what'd you say, Taxachusetts?
Well, I mean, those are the things that caused the Paradise Papers and the Panama Papers, right? You got $100 million and all of a sudden Panama looks like a good country to store your cash in. But it sounds like, what you're saying is that that's going down quite a bit. And if you say if your net worth is more than a few $1 million and up, it's going to be that lower to middle class that's going to have to deal with the millionaires. Then you're going to be dealing with the DECA and the 100 millionaires where they've got their money pretty much locked up some other way.
Right. And last I heard, and it might be dead in the water, was that the current administration was trying to change that number to 3.5 million, which is a much lower amount, particularly for those of us that own homes in California. And in some states, I'm sure like Boston is probably the same. You own a house, within the city limits, it's probably worth quite a pretty penny. So you're going to hit that real quick. So, I mean, I haven't heard anything in terms of that moving forward. I think the administration's a little bit dead in the water in terms of getting anything done, but we don't know. It's possible. I mean, the midterms are in 10 months. So I guess we'll find out after that.
Well, that's always certainly going to be interesting, but I agree that a lot of these things probably are likely dead in the water. But with that being said, there is certainly a lot of people out there that feel like there need to be more taxes on the wealthy, and that ends up bringing your dog into it who's barking. He doesn't even like the taxes on the wealthy. He's saying, I don't want these taxes. And so we obviously know where Madison's dog stands on this. And we don't edit these podcasts, by the way, so we're just rolling with it. But those are the big ones. Are there any other services that you seem to find that a lot of families are coming to you for that pertain to their planning? Like what's a service or a situation that might be out of the norm that you're like, hey, this doesn't happen often and it's kind of interesting?
Yeah. So sometimes we get people asking about their digital assets. So that could be Bitcoin, or, cryptocurrency, or it could be their TikTok page or their podcast, their Facebook, their whatever, Meta accounts. And so a lot of it is the state by state again, but typically, and we've seen a little bit, being in the Bay Area, we see a lot of heavy news about Apple and things like that, and how they're not willing, as much as they're willing to hold on to your privacy. They're not willing to give it up when somebody dies and they need to hand over the reins to a parent or a spouse. They don't want to hand that over. So with Facebook and Apple, if you don't have those passwords set aside for somebody who's going to take over your accounts or close them, it's very difficult to get these companies to comply. And now we're seeing, with Instagram and TikTok, people they have monetized everything, and YouTube. So, they've monetized. YouTube is like, if you read their terms and conditions, because that's what governs everything. It's not the state law. It's the actual company's terms and conditions that you don't read when you open an account somewhere. And you certainly don't read that little email update they send you that they've been updated. YouTube's like, if you request money on an account or to close an account for a loved one or a deceased person, we'll review everything and then we'll let you know. That's how vague their website is about everything. Now, in California, there's a law that governs that says that if you have a power of attorney or a will or a trust that gives the power to whoever is acting for you after you die, they can access all of those things. Now, however that works, I don't know if you hand over a power of attorney or a trust to TikTok. Are they governed by a California probate code? Are they an American company? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know how that would work. It's always going to be a jurisdictional problem. So really having those passwords and having a plan set up prior is the best thing to do. And then, of course, with cryptocurrency, that's designed to be anonymous. You can't put that in your trust. You can't put that in your will. You can't even put a beneficiary on that account. And that's even like American companies like Robinhood and Acorn. You can't put a beneficiary on those accounts. They don't even have it in their FAQ, nothing. So it's important to be able to have those logins ready and available for your family members to access that money. Of course, if you give that login information too soon and you don't trust somebody, that might be a bigger problem, but it's kind of a fine line.
That was a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't even think about. I'm sitting here thinking like, wow, I need to update my own information based on what you just said to me. That's because I was thinking digital assets like my pictures on Facebook. I wasn't thinking like cryptocurrency and the monetization of all of the stuff. It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's, to me, for most people, that's the bigger thing is that's what their family wants to make sure is get any money that there might be out there. But that's true. Like if someone's going to lose a child and that like they want that child's videos and pictures, like that might be all that they can have or find. And I mean, nowadays, who prints pictures of their kids other than when you get the packet home from school, like that, it's all on the internet or it's all on your phone or it's all on a digital, thumb drive somewhere. So that might be just as important. It just depends on the person and the account, but yeah, Facebook just allows you to either close it or memorialize it or let it go on in perpetuity. And then you get freaked out when you post something and you're like, oh, so-and-so posted and they're not alive. And you're like, wait, what? So it's, it gets weird, but yeah, they're all, it's a lot of components. I mean, the digital world is it's too easy to sum it up as digital assets.
That actually happened to me. My mom passed away and I went into her Facebook account and I responded to a few people and they kind of, the first one or two were like, what, Debbie, what is going on here? And I was like, no, this is Ryan. This is the son. We're not, she said, we had a laugh about it. Like I thought Debbie was reaching out from the grave, like to say hello to me through Facebook, but absolutely. That is something really interesting because, like I haven't, like, for example, I've sometimes deleted my Facebook account and then I reinstate it and then I don't have certain friends or my mom isn't my friend anymore. And then you're like, well, you'd like to be connected with your mom. So it's a good thing I can kind of go into her account and then accept my friend request and see who writes on her page and kind of the memorialized it. But I think for a lot of people, like they're going to go, hey, listen, I'm dead. Who cares what happens to my Facebook page or Instagram page? Because most people don't have it monetized, but those that do, it's certainly going to be interesting, especially with the Bitcoin. Like you're eventually going to have somebody that has like a sizable amount of cryptocurrency. I just sounded like I'm 60 right there, didn't I? By saying cryptocurrency. God. By having cryptocurrency, and then there's no way to access it because it's locked behind a vault and some 50-digit password that nobody has. And
right.
10, 20, $100 million is just sitting there for the remainder of time that nobody will be able to access.
Yeah, I mean, we see news stories all the time about someone combing through a landfill because they lost their own key or whatever. I don't even know what it's called. So, I mean, we're not going to talk about ages here, but they lost their own password to their cryptocurrency account and they're still alive and kicking, and they lost their $100 million because they just couldn't get that 16-digit. It looks, I picture whatever the password is. I picture whatever Apple tries to pre-populate on your phone when it creates a password for you. Like, looks like a credit card number, but it's all numbers and letters and dashes. That's what I picture. I don't know what it actually is, but I can't imagine. And that's what I was thinking, Tara. Like, if you have to write, who wants to go find all your passwords and write them down for somebody? That just seems like an exercise in futility. And they're going to remind you that you need to change them all.
That's true. You have to change everything every few months. It's interesting.
Well, that's why you have a password manager. You only need one password, and then you can just pass the password down to your next of kin, and then they have access to everything, good or bad. I mean, I'm sure there's some things they don't want to know about you have access to, but that's another story for another time. But that's what you do. You have a password manager like Bitwarden or LastPass or something like that.
So can we go back to maybe just kind of one simple question to the $100 million Bitcoin, but like, let's talk about $100 in your house. What if you literally have no plan? Mm-hmm. And what happens to your stuff? Your heirs don't have control. I know it varies by state, but maybe you can give us a general.
Yeah. So typically if you have no plan and you have a home and, a couple bank accounts and the stuff in your home, they have typically, and I think it's the same across all states, is that you'd have to file a probate, particularly if you own a home. In California, there's a threshold, a dollar amount for probate in terms of bank accounts. So you would have to have more than that, or if you have real estate, typically you're going to have to file a probate. Somebody that has some sort of what's called legal standing, meaning like they know you, they're a family member, they could be appointed as the executor of your estate. The court has to appoint you. They have to vet you. You have to get a bond just to make sure you don't run off with everyone's money. And essentially, the law would say who the beneficiaries are. And typically, it's whoever your legal next of kin are. So, for example, and I don't know if it's the same in every state, but in California, it would be your children or your spouse. And that can get kind of weird with community and separate properties. So we'll just pretend like that doesn't exist. We'll have a single person die. So it would go to your kids. If you don't have children in California, it goes back up to your parents if they're still alive. If they're not alive, then it goes to any siblings or half siblings you might have. And half siblings are treated as full siblings in California. And if any of them are dead, it goes to their kids. So it just is like this big willow tree of, if it doesn't work on this generation, we go up and try and, go down and do all that. So eventually it could be like second, third cousins if you don't have any immediate family. So the court supervises the process where your executor goes in, cleans out your house, has access to your accounts. They sell the house. They sell what's in the house, unless beneficiaries want anything in particularity. And they liquidate everything. They provide an accounting to the court. And when the court signs off, they write checks to the beneficiaries. And then the attorney for the executor and the executor both can get paid for their time via a statutory fee compensation. So it's not an hourly rate. It's like percentage of the dollar amount of the estate. And it takes a while.
I was just going to ask, this process could take months and years. And if you're significant like Prince and have nothing, it could go on till the end of time.
Yes. And, and the executor, if they don't know anything, like if you're a second cousin flew in out of state to help with, your cousin's estate, they have to go through everything in your house to find any money, any cash that they find, gold coins that have to be deposited or liquidated. Everything has to be appraised by a court appraiser. All of that. So there's a lot of steps. It's very hard to get a court date right now in California. I assume that's going to be everywhere because of COVID. It's the same, workage delays because of lack of employees being available. It was pretty bad before COVID, and now it's just worse. So, I mean, just getting one hearing date, we've seen 8 to 9 months out, and you're going to need at least 2 hearing dates in order to have a probate, and that's if there's no problems. So, I mean, that you're looking at maybe 2 years at a minimum if there's no issues whatsoever.
That's crazy. So just kind of reinforces the need to plan, even if it's just a small estate, what you consider small. It really helps your heirs in the long run to have.
Yeah, I mean, especially like if you're leaving children behind, even if those children are adults, you still might want them to have access to that money right away. And if it's a probate, that's not going to happen. Now, in some states, if you have a will, the probate process can be fairly streamlined. In California, a will is not good enough. A will is a regular probate, the same as if you didn't have anything. So in California, you would need a revocable trust, assuming you have the assets that you would need to put in a trust. There are ways to avoid it, like you can put a beneficiary on your bank account, and then it goes that way. That's not going to work if you want to have any type of control or have layers of, like if you're worried about people dying out of order, which frankly, that happens all the time. So best laid plans, but people die out of order all the time. And then we end up with all kinds of problems.
I have go ahead.
Go for it.
I have a question. What is your overall feeling on ruling from the grave? And what I mean by that is, if for those that don't know, is having certain things in your will that, other than giving money to certain people, the certain family members are obligated to do certain things outside of just who gets what money and who gets what house, and what kind of, there must be difficulties that come up with trying to rule from the grave.
Yeah, so we see that a lot. We see it in, I want Timmy to be able to live in my house for the next 20 years. And then if he moves out or after 20 years, then the house gets sold and divided amongst him and his 5 siblings. So those 5 siblings now don't get an inheritance for 20 years. That may work if everybody gets along, but we've come to find, and it's not entirely surprising, that when money is involved, people stop getting along real quick. So it's just, those are things that, it happened, and we're happy to oblige, but we usually counsel people like, hey, we can do it. It's legal, but you're tying up everybody's inheritance for a long time, or they're not going to be happy about it. And, is it worth it to you to have this one child be able to live in the house, or is it more worth it to you that they all get along? So we just have to counsel them on that and hope that they make the best decision for their family, which is, no one ever makes the best decision for their family. You would think you are, but it goes out the window. It goes out the window packing your kids' lunch. It just is what it is,
That's very true. My daughter just found the joy of Lunchables, because I'm like, I'm not packing it. I had good hopes, good dreams. Nope.
Yeah, everyone wants to be the mom that makes a little bento box with the cutout. Yeah, no. And then 6 o'clock rolls around and it all goes out the window.
Yep, totally. Well, can you share a little bit about what you guys are doing for the seniors in the San Francisco Bay Area, and how the chapter is getting involved there, and kind of how you fit into what the chapter is doing there?
Yeah, so our chapter is new-ish, and we formed right before COVID. Like, we literally signed our documents via DocuSign when COVID first hit and we first locked down. So we haven't been able to we've had one in-person event that was this past December, and then all that stopped again. But we had a mixer, but we've been trying to do, Facebook Lives and or webinars just to promote education. Our big focus right now is membership, because we need more people so we can provide more education. So we're just trying to continually work on how we can all fit in and help each other. As I'm the only attorney in the group, so I get a lot of questions. We also deal a lot with Medi-Cal planning, which is California's version of Medicaid, which is, everybody wants to pay for that home care that it doesn't pay for. So, or that they think Medicare pays for that it does not. So it's a lot of just answering basic questions that, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of centralized resources that just explain all of this. Like, how does housing work? If I can no longer live on my own, what are the options? Who pays for what? Does anyone pay for it other than me? And all of those options. So we have quite a few members who are either in senior placement or senior care or assisted living. And so we try and all focus on how we can help each other. We have, a grab bar person who does house modifications. We have downsizers. We have all kinds of people that are great. I just had someone reach out to me that is a senior dentist that goes to your home. And everyone is very excited about that. It's not great. Medicare doesn't cover dental yet. But so that's not helpful. But in terms of getting someone who's not maybe super mobile that needs dental care, that would be great. So we're focusing on membership and focusing on education. I have my 2 outreach people who are trying really hard to find an in-person location to have monthly events. It's proving to be very difficult. So we are working on that, but we can always do digital. So that's forever an option now to do a webinar.
And you are one of the guest speakers on our new partnership with My Health Angel, which is a streaming service that provides education to seniors across the country. So your first event is in 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the 31st.
Yep, you can register at myhealthangel.com if you want to hear more from Madison, or if you have some seniors there that have questions, legal questions, they're able to ask Madison questions directly during that presentation. So you can sign up at myhealthangel.com for that. And if people want to get a hold of you directly, Madison, how would they do that?
Yeah, they can reach me through our website at absolutetrustcounsel.com. I would spell it, but that's really long. But just know that Counsel is Counsel. But you can Google it and it should pop right up. You can email us at info@absolutetrustcounsel.com, and you can call us at 925-943-2740. I think that's right. We're going to pretend that's right. I hope it doesn't go to somebody else. Why that blanked on that right this second, I have no idea.
And they can always find you and any of the other members from the San Francisco chapter at ageinplace.org. That website I definitely know. Ryan,
I will put all the information down below in the description as well, so that if people can't spell counsel or you gave the wrong number, they will get to the right place one way or another.
I was correct, but my self-doubt just really drained right there, right in that moment of talking.
Yeah, it was actually quite entertaining. So I think it added to the podcast without it. It shows the personality we all have, right? Fun and going with the flow. But with that being said, thank you so much, Madison, for being our latest victim of conversations with Tara and Ryan. You did a great job. And I think that people will find the way that you presented your services in entertaining and informative, because sometimes they can be tough, right? People don't like talking about these things, but it's really important. And a little bit of planning goes a long way. So if you're in California, talk to Madison. If you're not, ignore her. Do not call her. She's only available in California.
You can call us if you need a referral. We can do that for you to somebody out of state. That's not a problem.
And check out Madison's podcast as well, or the company's podcast. They have their own podcast. If you are just dying to get your fix of more information about estate planning, that's the place to go.
And it's called Absolute Trust Talk, and you can find it on all of your podcast platforms.
And I will link to that as well. Thank you so much. And Tara, any last words?
No, this was great. Thank you, Madison. Thanks for all you're doing for our organization and for seniors in California.
Yes.
And if you out there listening want to be part of our organization, the National Aging in Place Council, please go to ageinplace.org. You will be able to see the different chapters in your area. And if you don't see one, you could be the one that creates one in your area, and you just sign up, become a member, and you will get access to Tara and I and our email addresses, and we can help you. We are real people that will be able to work with you. So if you're interested, reach out to us. We'd love to have you as a member or starting a new chapter. With that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this podcast. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcounsel.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcounsel.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode in 2 weeks. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcounsel.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.